Welcome to Earful of Dirt, bringing you the latest Major League Rugby news, views, and abuse. Now here are your hosts, Aaron, Dan, and Victor.
How's it going, everyone? Good to see you. So let's get into the show. We'll find out if it's short or not. We've been going pretty long. So the Houston Strikers continue to round out their squad with multiple signings this week. I thought it was going to be 4. And then I think the last guy was signed and announced on Saturday. We've got some MLR score lines that were very interesting. Most of us have seen most of the tape, so we'll talk about that. And today is September 11th, a day 16 years ago that changed most of our lives in the course of a few of ours. So just remember that, everyone. So, Dan, let's get into something awesome to talk about.
Well, so on that note, before actually switching over to straight rugby, I'm from New Jersey originally. My dad actually used to work on Water Street, which is probably 4 or 5 blocks away from where World Trade Center was. But for some reason took the day off. I think he was sick, which he's never sick. So thanks for that. It was just a crazy day. I was in 4th grade, so I had no idea what's going on. But anyway, something a bit happier. Going to the Houston Strikers signings, they're signing a couple more people. One of which was, and we've had some issues over the past couple of podcasts with names, but I think it's Joshua Vici. Joshua Vici. Can someone confirm that, or just say nothing and then they'll just assume that's correct?
I think Islander names pretty much say, as long as you say them phonetically and fast. So Joshua Vici.
BC.
Let's say it fast.
BC.
It's not French or Spanish.
Joshua Vici.
It's not Italian, it's BC.
Vici.
Vici, yes.
Yeah, Victor seems to be
Italian. It's
more
not
knowledgeable
Italian.
about this. Anyway, so he is a contracted Fiji Sevens player. I don't know as much about him as I do Osea, the other guy. We've also got
Osea Kolinisa, bro.
Yeah.
Osea Kolinisa, come on.
But like I said, I don't know as much about him, but he is a Sevens player, a successful Sevens player for Fiji, which is a very successful Sevens program. So I don't know much about him 15s-wise. However, he's very fast, adds a bit more versatility for the Strikers. And as far as I'm concerned, because they signed a lot of other guys that seem to be really well-known at least, I don't expect him to actually start. So at least from my own personal opinion on that is it's a great signing. I mean, it usually is whenever you can get an actual gold medal winning Fiji Sevens player just to join you. The other signing they also actually had recently was Chris Parker. He's a lock, most recently with Hark and Austin Blacks. That actually just read directly off of my own script because I really don't know too much about Chris Parker. My analysis of locks is pretty bad because I tried playing it once and it was not good at all. My shoulders really hurt about 2 weeks ago when I tried playing it. So I think he's pretty good, though. I know you guys seem to put a bit more analysis into that, though, than I did. Yes? No?
Yeah, I mean, he's from like this legendary class of Texas A&M rugby going through like classes of 2010, 2011, and 2012. He was a Negro Azul 7 select. He was a junior All-American, men's All-American, and played for Katy Barbarians. And as I was told, English by birth and Aggie by the grace of God.
I wonder who told you that. Just I have no idea who would have said that. Those are my two the picks I was meant to go over. So Victor, I know you had a couple that you were going to go over because luckily for us, the Strikers signed a lot of players, so we can talk about a lot of the players.
Seriously, Dan, this past week has been ridiculous in terms of signings for the Strikers, which was good.
You think it's over. You think it's over, but it just keeps
yeah, really.
coming.
Seriously, like dang it, like
It's like Tuesday. Tuesday, they'll say someone else gets signed.
Exactly.
Before even Victor goes over the other three signings, I will say I really like that the Strikers make sure to have a really official photo and they announce each of the signings. I mean, it makes it sound a lot more official. It makes it sound like these players are much better than they may be. I don't know much about a lot of them, but the fact that it says, picture of Chris Parker saying, just signed Chris Parker, played with Hart, played with Austin Blacks. We know about him through that. It's better than just kind of looking at the roster and saying, oh, that guy played for the Eagles and he just happened to be practicing with them. And you just kind of find out by looking at the game day roster. But I really love that there's actual roster announcements, and it kind of makes it a big deal.
Yeah, it makes it also seem more professional, I guess.
Definitely.
And I actually really enjoy seeing the pictures of Coach Fitzpatrick going out to the airport and picking the guys up. That's a nice personal touch.
Yeah, very true. Cool.
It's sort of it's very professional, but it also feels kind of like a family down there. So Strikers are doing it right as far as their social media promotion, as we've said many times.
Or they can't afford a taxi. We're not really sure about
that. Yeah. That too. That's true too. Okay, guys, so going on my players. So first we have Chris Milic, I believe it's pronounced. Scrum half, but he also plays 10 and 12. A bit on the size for 12, and is a natural 9 by his size. Great ball movement out of the ruck. Moved to Houston for a new job in June while just having had a new ankle installed. Go figure. He got himself in shape for the Strikers Combine Series, by the way. Shows amazing toughness as well. Former U.S. South Panther, multi-year Negro y Azul, as in black and blue. Sevens player as well. Atlanta Sevens, Charlotte Rugby Football Club down up in North Carolina. Well, from my point of view, down in North Carolina. Barrenby Rugby Club in Australia. University of North Carolina, Charlotte 49ers Rugby as well. So this guy is looking quite good. Next we have, and this one's really important, Mr. Kenneth Petey Hepburn, who plays several positions, by the way, from row, back row too. So this guy is very versatile, really cool. He's coming out of Sam Houston State University's team. He played for the U.S. under-19s, and he's a former captain of the Jamaican Sevens team, the Crocs, which you probably heard me mention a couple of podcasts ago. Other clubs that he played for include Lone Star, the Woodlands, and Houston Athletic. Also Athletic Sevens as well, with just the same as Milic. Pete is currently the head coach of the Cypher Warriors as well. And you may remember that we were talking to the famous Grant Cold last week, and Grant is a really big fan of Petey's, saying that he was one of the first names that he gave Coach Fitzpatrick of players in the Houston area. Now, to me, and I never seen the guy played, that speaks a lot for Mr. Hepburn, because I mean, if Grant is putting him in such a high pedestal, I think the guy is definitely worth it. So again, congrats to him for joining the team. And finally, we have Dan Paul, who played in Birmingham Young University and was a member of the designated College Rugby Championship Sevens running-up team, as well as the 2009's championship team as well. He first began playing at a Jakarta, intercultural school. Jakarta is the capital of Indonesia, for those of you that don't know their geography. Most recently, he played at a Houston Athletic and West Houston Rugby Club. So, guys, I'm telling you, the signings are looking better and better. I cannot wait to see the Strikers form having the first game.
Yeah, I looking at all of their signings, if you look at the U.S.-based players, I think the only one without any accolades or I would say insane athletic ability was Jack Riley, who's an English-born player who came over like 5 years ago. There's a few other dudes that, like Lethadius Hill. He hasn't played rugby, but he comes from some hardcore Texas rugby genes. But then, I mean, you have All-Americans everywhere. Just with these 5 signings, they're impressive for a lot of different reasons. Like the adding of Chris Parker shows that a connection is being built with Texas A&M RFC because they also signed Connor Mills and Andres Diaz. Then we've talked about there needing to be like strategic partnerships with college clubs and MLR clubs, and that might be it. But you also see it with community clubs because of the amount of players they've signed out of Lone Star Rugby Football Club, which says, hey, if you want to play. Locally, Phil Beck is the coach, and he'll develop you. And then you have the connection with Fiji, Joshua Vitsi, and also previously Osea Kalinisau. It might weaken the Fiji Sevens team, but they've got a lot of guys in their system waiting to come up. And VC wasn't on the Olympic gold medal team, but he has played in the last 3 Hong Kong Sevens, which I would call the Hong Kong Sevens the biggest stop on the HSBC Sevens series. So, you're not just seeing random people get signed at all. And you look at, say, we just talked about Chris Millage and also about Kenneth P. Hepburn. So Atlantis Sevens. What is Atlantis Sevens? Emilio Sinez, the previous men's Sevens coach, also started the USA Women's Sevens team and was a assistant on the Women's 15s team when it first started back in the early 90s. He was the creator of Atlantis Sevens, and if you get selected to play for Atlantis Sevens, it means you're really good. So just for those who don't really know Atlantis Sevens that much, it's a very select group of players that get to play for them. So I think we're on to something else, Corey. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, while we're on the topic of signing things, we've got some good signings out of Strikers this week, but MLR made a major move as well. They signed an agreement with the Red River Rugby Collegiate Conference in Texas, and I think this is a pretty big deal. Hey, Dan, what are you hearing about it?
I mean, it just, all in all, it's really I think it's Red River Rugby Collegiate Conference, so it's 3R, 2Cs. So it's really a mouthful, but they are announcing a strategic partnership. What that exactly entails, I'm not entirely sure. I don't think a lot of us are really entirely sure, but it does mean that they did mention in the press release that they are trying to use this as a way for player development, for coaching, for, I guess, some sort of coordination between collegiate and this professional league, which right now it's really just a press release just saying we want to work together. So it may be very little. It may just be this little announcement and they kind of have some conversations with people in the top, or it could be this great player development tool and this great way to get players to come up from college and really transition into the professional side. I mean, the pessimist in me will say that even at the very lowest, if it's just we support this, that alone legitimizes the whole concept of Major League Rugby. Because if you see that there's a sports organization or even like a trade organization, like for different professions, and you don't see the local community in some sense support it, it kind of makes you think that it's not, I guess, real in the sense, or not. So you shouldn't really be taking it seriously as much. At least in my own opinion, I think that just announcing that they're actually partnering with them to some degree is great. I don't know what, Victor, I think you had something else to talk about that too.
Well, I do, but I thought I was going to have Mr. Castro go before me.
Oh.
That's what happens when I don't look at the script and I just ramble.
I mean, Victor can go. I can.
Well, I mean, okay. I mean, I'll do it because, I mean, Dan passed me the voice, so I might as well do so. Don't worry, so I'll be pretty pro, so I'll put you back in. So I guess triple R, double C? I mean, like, I don't know. I don't know what to call it. Yeah, let's do triple R, double C. Let's just do it like that. I think it sounds a lot cooler. So, guys, this partnership is great because with this, more players from those institutions within the conference should be able to enter the teams in Texas and Louisiana. So it's going to be a more local base, a type of environment for well, no environment, no, it's not the word. It's going to be more, I guess, more local base of players within those teams. So that way they don't have to rely as much with foreigners. I mean, the foreigners obviously will be important, but not as much as, like, say, oh my God, like top 14, where in France, where you have most of the players coming out of France, and that's why the French teams do so bad in recent years. But that's another thing. Now, those colleges and universities also could become the breeding grounds for the next crop of players, besides having academies for each individual team. So what I'm envisioning this with the Red River Conference, and hopefully other conferences once other teams open up around the states, it's that their best players from this conference will be able to easily transition into an MLR side. So those conferences become the single, double, and triple A's of baseball to a certain extent. So again, and also you could have those, like in baseball, you could have those teams affiliated with particular teams where when the player turns of a certain age, well, of course, turns of a certain age, or if it's of a certain standing, it transitions smoothly within an MLR team.
So, yeah, for me, it was a press release that said, "Hey, we're partnering together. We're going to do something." It didn't say what. I hope that it provides opportunity for select players in these university programs to attend the MLR academies in the summer, because as we all know, currently USA Rugby releases collegiate players to return to their home clubs to play for summer conditioning and for summer sevens. So I would like to see that happen a bit. And just, like I made emphasis on the local relationship earlier between Strikers and Texas A&M, I want to see more of these. I don't want to see this be the only one, because it sort of selects a winner. Whereas, if they select if they sign 5 of these, which would be most of the conferences in D1A, I would like that. So, because, just because you're in an academy doesn't mean you make it, which is what, all the academies we've seen in Europe, not everyone makes it through the academy system to be
0.1%. It's like nothing.
Yeah, so
at least in there.
It just increases the overall percentage of athletes that are connected to the system. So
I think
that's what I got.
On that, though, I think it's good that a lot of these colleges actually are pretty close to these cities like Houston or Austin or Dallas, if it's still around, or Louisiana. So if there is, for example, just a kid who goes to school here and they're done with school, they're in good shape, they're a good rugby player, but they didn't really want to do the full-time professional thing, they're living at home with their parents, can make $10,000-$15,000 a year or something like that, play a couple of years for a professional side. That's a great experience just to be able to do that alone. So we're bound to find someone through that.
So unrelated to the Red River Conference, I just wanted to point out real quick before we move on that this week we actually introduced a new series to our collection of shows as well. We launched something called Line Outs, and it's actually an interview show, and Aaron was nice enough to handle the first one here, and he took the prestigious job of talking to Mr. Dan Lyle. And Aaron, do you want to tell us a little bit about how that interview went and kind of what you guys talked about?
Yeah, so I'm previously acquainted with Dan. We both went to the same college, him a long time ago, and I just a little bit ago. But we were trying to get this thing done, and this call we were on was supposed to be sort of about logistics, and then it was like, hey, from Paul Morgan, who is the communications director of Premiership Rugby. I didn't really know who he was. I just knew who he was, the director of Premiership Rugby, and then I looked him up real quick, and he's an accomplished rugby author, wrote many books about rugby, the history of rugby, and he's like, hey, Dan, can you do this? And Dan's like, let's go. And so I launched the event, and we got into it. And they're talking about the American series as being the beachhead for rugby into the United States in regards to the Premiership, which I think is a very important thing, because we've seen that with the NFL doing the London series. After pulling out of Europe, they started doing the London series, and now we're at the point with American football. There isn't direct investment from the NFL, but they're putting their premier product there. However, it's kind of, I looked it up the other day. British universities and colleges sports system sanctions contact men's and women's collegiate football, and then co-ed flag football. So that would be, we're putting the premier product in America, starting last year with the previous match. And then this year, they just signed a multi-year deal. So they'll bring the Saracens and Newcastle to Philadelphia. They're both, hanging out, eating cheesesteak and training right now. But they're going to try and see how this fits in the American rugby schedule, which Dan talked about in our interview. Like, maybe it doesn't fit in September. Maybe it fits, in April. But eventually they want more matches. But it's going to be one for right now, because they have to test the water and secure the beachhead. But it was a really good interview, and I think we set ourselves up for success going forward for whoever we snag for Lineouts episode 2, because Dan's a great interview, and Paul Morgan was also a great interview, and they were awesome to have on as guests. And promoting professional rugby in America is really what we're about. What do you guys think?
The other thing I just wanted to say is I really enjoyed just you guys' rapport. I thought it was actually a great chance to kind of get in there and kick back a little, and you all seemed very natural, so I was very impressed with just the series. And that's available all the places you can listen to this show, so it's up on our YouTube channel right now, as well as all of the download locations. So if you guys want to check it out, don't do it right now because we're still talking, but after the show you can go ahead and download or watch that interview with Paul Morgan and Dan Lyle. So
if you really want 2 different screens.
Hey, so Victor, did you have a chance to listen to that one?
I did, and I was not expecting that we were going to get Dan Lyle so fast in our podcast history. I mean, it's only episode 4, and here we are already talking to the man, the myth, the legend. Now, what I find interesting with the English Premiership is the fact that, they are taking a page out of the NFL, out of National Football League, as we mentioned, in having some games, obviously, in England. Although I do hope to see a league game in an NFL stadium soon, as in like a Premiership, because keep in mind, like the first 2 in MLS stadiums, which I don't mind, obviously. But I will again. It would be really nice to see a rugby game in an American football stadium. Well, besides obviously the time when the All Blacks play USA that one time and then Ireland last year. So we'll see.
And we weren't stopping with just one new show. No, we introduced 2 new shows this week. I think we're officially approaching media mogul status here. We're getting pretty close to it.
There you go. Let's go.
Victor and I on Saturday, along with a friend of Victor's, Raph, jumped on the YouTubes and actually did some match commentary for the Glendale Merlins versus Ontario Arrows match. That's one that we're not putting up on the podcast channels. It's YouTube exclusive, I guess you could call it. But it's mostly just us kind of shooting the bull and talking about rugby while the match is going on, and occasionally paying attention to the score. So
that was the best part.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun, though. So if you guys want to check that out, that's available as well. So that one's called... what did we end up calling that
Match
one, guys?
Companion.
Match Companion. That's
Match
it.
Companion.
So if anyone's a big fan of Joe Rogan, the idea sort of, like, it wasn't mine. The idea sort of was, hey, Corey, just shooting an email and say, hey, this game's on. Do you guys want to do commentary? And I was like, you know what? And typed it up. And it's like, so Joe Rogan, when he's not calling fights for the UFC, he does match companions in his studio. So that's basically what we're doing is, talking about rugby and talking a little bit about the game. And I was able to make it for the second half. So let's talk about, some score lines that go into that. First about Glendale. So what was basically a rematch, the Merlins defeated the Ontario Arrows, which were really a beefed up Ontario Blues, but they had some key positions with, I guess, infusion of talent, especially their number 10 or fly half. And so they lost 41-7 to the Merlins. And then the Seattle Saracens in the BC Premier League played Capilano 27-34. And did everyone get a chance to watch the Seattle film?
I tried watching the first couple minutes, but it was basically they've been actually doing this for a couple of years now. They would just have someone up there with a camera recording it, which I think is mostly for their own purposes, but also just to play online. But the Merlins match was definitely Infinity Park, meant to be broadcasted specifically for that. I only watched the first couple minutes of the Saracens one. It looked pretty messy. It was rainy, as you kind of expect Seattle to be at all times. Definitely looked like it was fun, but it was not as, I think, engaging for me at least as the Merlins one was, even though the Merlins was actually a blowout.
Now I'll tell you guys that Merlin Irish game was a beating to the Ontario side and a sweet vengeance to Glendale on their field, which was the best part because when they lost against the Raptors, though, that was in Ontario province. Now I did saw the San Francisco Capilano game as well. It was played like Dan just said, it was playing really bad field conditions because it was raining, as it is in Seattle, Washington. But that didn't stop the players from scoring because the scoreline was big. Again, that was 34-27. That wasn't that bad. Also, the famous Psalm Wushing, if you're not familiar with him, he's he was really first a rugby player, then started playing American football for University of Washington, left it so he could focus on rugby. He scored a try, and that was great. It was really cool. Now, the front row of Seattle looked to me that was out of shape. Especially one guy, the guy named Olive Khalifi, who plays for the U.S. team. I don't know. He didn't look like a national team player to me personally, but hey, it's what it is. But in terms of production values, obviously the one in Glendale, it's like leaps and bounds above that one. Because the one in Seattle was more a guy with one camera just moving around, while obviously in Glendale you have different camera angles. But again, it's what it is. Again, game was cool, but then again, the production values add up to experience, which is what it did for me for the Arrows and Merlins game.
Yeah, I think criticism being what it is, I don't really know. As far as like what Seattle Saracens were putting up, I mean, they've done it for a couple of years. I think it's just to have the matches online as a cheap way of doing film study, and then we get to watch them on the back end for our own enjoyment. And I'll get to Glendale in a little bit, but it was a very muddy, rainy match. They weren't able to play at Magnuson Park down in Seattle, so they were up at Chuckanuck Bay Rugby Club, playing in Bellingham, Washington.
What was the name of that club?
Chuckanuck Bay Rugby Club.
Okay.
In Bellingham.
Strange name.
Yeah. So
be careful with that one next time.
Chuckanoot. there's no E on the end, so I don't know. But they were up there, and it was just field was muddy. It looked like I was watching the premiership match that was on Friday. Newcastle sell Sharks, and it was just sloppy, crash bally, lots of rain. Psalm did get a nice try, but for the most part, it was really like 8-man rugby, and ball handling errors were rough. And I agree with Victor a lot. I was trying to watch the match to watch Psalm, to be honest, but I, being a front row, pay attention to that, and it was messy. And Khalifi is an Eagle, and in the current Eagle pool, and I was a bit disappointed to see the shape he was in, but not shape being what it is. He didn't have control at the scrum, and he had a lot of scrummage errors on himself and scrummage penalties that you just don't expect from an Eagle grade player. So that was really my big beef with that. And getting to Glendale, I can guess that the Merlins D1 will be mostly the Glendale Raptors, because most of those guys were the previous Raptors. And they're a little bit more reinforced from when they played the Blues. But the bodies, they looked like they were professional. So that was the first thing. And then they just went out there and wrecked.
That's what made it more entertaining, too. They just looked a lot like they were professional rugby players. It didn't look like a D2 game.
Yeah, and then, the arrows, I think, like, scoreline being what it is, it was short notice. We're going to do a proof of concept tour of the United States because we want to join the MLR next year, so we need to check the logistics.
Supposedly join the MLR.
Yeah, supposedly. I wouldn't spend this much money on travel if I wasn't going to join the MLR next year, because they're making like 5 road trips that are all plane flights. So
yeah.
But the second side is I guess not the second side, but the last. Whenever all the subs were in, it got a little sloppy, but still the bodies looked like they were there. So I think. It was a preview of the Raptors, and I'm impressed. I really want to see Raptors Houston. That's what I want to see.
I mean, I think it's just how it's going to be. I mean, the Raptors just flat out dominated MRC last year, which is very short. But when they played the Huns, which were pretty much the other most professional organization, they still beat them by a lot.
Yeah,
both times.
It just wasn't a lot. Yeah,
that's right. That's very true.
So
guys, we're pushing for a final in the MLR, most likely Glendale Raptors, Houston Strikers for the final, maybe.
I think so.
Yeah.
Based on what we know about current teams, I mean, Austin Elite already had most of their side. I think they're going to bring in some South African players, but they haven't made any announcements. They've made a bunch of strategic announcements, but no player announcements. So, and then
also with the Merlins match, there seemed to be a lot of confusion over because they switched from the Raptors to the Merlins, but it seems my understanding is that almost everyone who played was part of the Raptors team last year, but I guess because they did the whole rebranding, it's essentially just changing the name, but it's the exact same team. So my assumption is that next year we're going to see pretty much the same team that we would have seen on Saturday if anyone watched it. So if anyone wants a really nice glimpse into Raptors for next year, that's really the best way to really look at it.
Yeah, that was before going into the match, that was my big criticism, knowing who was on each side. I wanted to see the depth of Glendale's system. I didn't want to see, the guys who are going to be putting on the Raptors shirt. But since it was basically a rematch, I was just really impressed.
Yeah.
Okay, guys. So we want to take a couple minutes, as always, and check out some corrections from last week's show. So we'll just go ahead and disavow everything we said last week. None of that's right. all of this is correct, though, so there'll be no corrections next week, I promise. All right, Frank, Dan, go ahead.
There we go, correction right there. Correction right there. Oh, dude, that's awesome.
All right.
Well, Frank. So our special guest from last week, Grant Cole, who, since I wasn't actually here last week, I guess wasn't really my special guest, but it was your guys' special guest from last week.
He was your replacement.
And he basically was. I guess it was a good thing I wasn't there. There'd be too many people. But he sent his apologies on a few facts. First of all, the strikers field is 12 feet higher, not 6 feet, than the surrounding area. So he did discuss how it basically wasn't hit at all by Harvey because it was they put a lot of dirt there from other construction of the highway, and it's actually 12 feet, not 6 feet higher. So that doesn't sound like it makes a huge difference, but it does. That's a lot of water to actually make up the difference. Constellation Field, which is the minor league baseball team field that they're going to play January 6th, their match next year. That's 20 feet higher than the surrounding area. This, I'm assuming, is a direct quote from Grant. It was not flooded, but I bet the infield can suck a pair of snake boots right off. So that was our correction for Grant last week. Victor, you had something you wanted to point out too.
Yeah, also, after being called out on Reddit this week by someone that shall remain nameless, I think we can all agree. Grant, Corey knows what we're talking about this, so we're going to mention it.
Anyway. I'm about to get called out.
No, I'm not going to call him. We're not going to call him my name.
We want people to call us and make sure we're saying the right things.
Journalistic integrity, but I mean,
if someone says numbers, I'm just going to.
No, it's just a guy. The guy. I'm not going to say his username. He knows who he is. I'm just not going to mention him. Because I think it was kind of rude the way he just came off to correct us.
Well, it's hard to
you guys.
It's hard to get tone in text. So
it's true.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he might have been typing it, in full grace, but it did not come across that way.
Okay, very well. But anyways, Grant explain. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Corey. Before
all I was gonna say is, we started the show because we all met on Reddit, and if you're gonna get insulted, that's the place to go.
Oh yeah,
we're all a bunch of assholes there.
Yeah, that and Tumblr or 4chan. Yeah,
it kind of just comes with the territory. So
yeah,
4chan's a bit worse.
Oh my God, dude, 4chan. Oh God Almighty, 4chan.
We'll discuss
that's
4chan
a 4chan, but we're not going to. We're not going to compare 4chan to Reddit. Oh my goodness, definitely not.
Right.
Oh Lord. Ew,
okay, and starting next week, we're going to be an all 4chan podcast. So
you mean that?
No freaking noobs.
Dude, you don't like yourself, Corey. If you want to be fortunate.
The depths
all
of
right.
hell.
So
anyways,
Aaron. Oh, Victor, finish up what you're saying.
Exactly. So Grant explained, guys, that about Rugby Ontario's operating budget compared to USA Rugby's operation budget. Now, at the Canadian dollars, it's about $1.75 million, which is about 1.4 US. Now, the key point for me, though, with Rugby Ontario is they finished the year with almost 600,000 Canadian dollars in cash assets. Now, the last 10 years, USAR has finished in the negative, by the way, in terms of assets, and sometimes almost like $1 million in lost. So, again.
Yeah. So, so Rugby Ontario, they've got their ducks in a row. But, yeah, so there was that. And then I was speaking to Grant about this. And then also about the field locations. And I'm guessing, with where the Strikers' ground will be, that's probably about 5 or more million gallons, which, again, something outrageous. And he sends his regrets for tarnishing the podcasts. And I say, no, friend.
He's banned.
You didn't, but thank you just the same. And you can take your lashings from people who will be mean. But
he's a big boy. I think he can handle it.
Yeah, so he was on Matt McCarthy's show this weekend talking about rugby relief, and guess who had him first?
Wasn't Dan Lyle on Matt McCarthy's show after us too?
No, he was on there he was on there before months ago. So, but you know,
I'm not saying they're copying us, but you know,
they're getting pretty close.
Wrap up.
They're getting pretty close. I don't know if they're booking their people sooner than us, but we're champing at the bit here for good people.
We're not in the Fantasy Sports Network though, so it doesn't count.
No, it doesn't. Yeah. They've got a professional studio. We've got 4 guys sitting in their living rooms.
I'm in my bedroom.
All right, guys. It's that time of the week again. We're going to go ahead and do Tweet of the Week. What? I think we need some theme music for Tweet of the Week, so we should work on that.
It's like Rocky music or something like that.
Tweet of the Week!
You know, it's funny you mentioned Rocky. That's interesting, because Tweet of the Week this week's coming from Philadelphia. It's actually not MLR related exactly, but it is all about the Saracens Falcons match coming up this weekend in Philadelphia. And as you know, that's a fantastic opportunity to catch 2 members of the Viva Premiership here on American soil, and the team members wasted no time getting out into the city and enjoying themselves. So this tweet actually comes from the Saracens Twitter account, and after they landed here in the U.S. with a little bit of downtime, Brad Barrett and Chris Wiles, American Chris Wiles, both of the Saracens went out and did what you always do in Philly. They paid homage to Rocky Balboa. So there's a great video that they posted up on, like I said, up on Twitter of the guys running up the stairs, and it goes along with this tweet. So here's our tweet of the week. It just says, "The captain and the hometown hero, showing how #Philadelphia should be done. Emoji clapping hands. At Brad Barrett, at Chris Wiles, at the Sly Stallone." So once again, we'll go through that. It is Twitter. It says, "The captain and the hometown hero, showing how #Philadelphia should be done. Clapping hands emoji. At Brad Barrett, at Chris Wiles, at the Sly Stallone." It's pretty awesome, guys.
They also actually responded to their own tweet with more emojis, which I'm looking this up now, and they just responded boxing glove emoji and hands that go like this, which if you're listening to this, you can't actually see what I was doing, but
is there an American flag?
There should be, but there's not. I'm gonna
America.
have to write them. Well, I'm gonna be there in Philly
to their
next
Twitter
week,
specialist.
So I'm gonna have to talk to them about that. That's a major infraction.
Now, Victor and Dan, aren't both you guys going down for that match?
Yeah, we are. And actually, before I mention that, guys, and since we're talking about Twitter, on Twitter, I don't know if you guys saw it at Victor NYC Tours, but I posted something regarding Mr. Chris Wiles. Chris Wiles is originally from Allentown, Pennsylvania.
Allentown?
Allentown. Actually, a friend of my wife's, Jennifer, which, by the way, shout out to Jennifer if she ever listens to this. I met her listen to this when I see her and her husband, Aaron. She's originally from Allentown, and I remember mentioning to her about Chris Wiles. And she said, "Oh, okay." Like, yeah, whatever. Sounds rugby guy. I mean, she doesn't know much of the game. So, I went to Wikipedia, type Allentown, and I saw the notable people from the town. And guess what? Chris Wiles was not in that list. But guess who's put him? This guy right here, Victor. So if you go to Wikipedia right now and you type Chris Wiles, or if you go to Allentown, PA, and you look at the notable people, I wrote, Chris Wiles, professional rugby union player, Saracens, and former USA rugby player for the Eagles in both 7s and 15s. Parents from England and moved to the country at age 11 and 12. So if you see that, I wrote that.
I see a source.
You're doing God's work, Victor.
I try, bro. I try. So anyway, so thank you. But again, if everyone else listening wants to check that out on Wikipedia, just know I did that, and hopefully they don't remove it. So going back to the match. So yeah, Daniel and I are going to the match. We are seating, unfortunately, in different areas, but because
It's
I
a
got
good
like
thing, actually. We get different angles for photos. It's a lot nicer.
Well, yeah, too. But I would have preferred having you like right there when I start screaming whatever. But hey, it's what it is. So I'm on the field seating, by the way, which is like the nice area. You'll see. My pictures will be better than Dan's. You'll notice.
I'll have a better, like more of a bird's eye view of the whole stadium.
Victor spent his life savings on these tickets.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's true. That was like a week's worth. Let's put
I
it
was
that way.
pretty upset because I bought my tickets and there was some discount or whatever that was going out, and then a week later, which I think 2 or 3 days ago, I saw something about Penn Mutual sponsoring, and then if you can get the same discount that I got, but then you can also be entered to win some sort of fan experience in addition to that.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
I won't get that fan experience because I bought them earlier. So moral of the story is wait until the last minute and you'll get more stuff.
Yeah, because it was 30% off it was 30% off, guys. You have no idea. Yeah, it was ridiculous. 30% off
at the door, and they'll just hand you everything the day of the actual match.
Seriously, I actually wanted to do that one, but I said, nah, let me get the fielding, so that way I'm closer to the action.
I actually prefer it a little bit further back so I can see everything.
Yeah, you can see everything too. That's right. I know, because I mean, it's just cooler, when the game is over. That way, the players come to you and shake hands and whatever.
Oh, that's true.
Because well, I mean, in the Ireland USA match, that's what I did. I was like literally right on front row, and I got a picture with Benjamin Sema. I got to talk to Tony Lambert's mom, her sister. I met Adrian McGate's girlfriend. And so I met McGate's girlfriend. Yeah, but let me tell you guys, I met McGate's girlfriend and her mom, who are both Colombian, just like Dan's girlfriend, by the way. So we're speaking Spanish with each other. It was really fun. I got a picture with her. I wanted to get a picture with AJ, but he was too busy.
I got a picture for the gram.
Yeah, so it was fun. I mean, I got to meet a lot of family members from the Eagles players.
I broke all the way up to the front when I went to the USA Ireland match, and I got denied. There was just some kid in front of me, and they did pictures, they did high fives, but I was like a little bit higher, and I was like reaching over. I got nothing. They just completely walked past me.
Man, that's
to pull me away, but oh well.
Yeah, I hear you, bro.
Hopefully this one.
As far as
I hope so.
The match itself is concerned, I don't know. After seeing Newcastle play Sale Sharks on Friday,
man,
and then watching Bath and Saracens, that was a class match.
That was great.
Man, guys, by the way, everyone listening, you have to watch that match.
I don't think it's gonna be. I don't think it's gonna be close.
I actually am a bit of a Saracens supporter, but
me too.
I
don't have my jersey actually.
I just looked at some Bath kit today.
Those kits are beautiful. Bath kits right now, 2017 and 18.
Like
beautiful.
Shampoo and.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you want to say both, like they say both, because
I think they do sell soap.
Yeah.
Over there, though, you'd have to go.
Sure.
You'd have to go over there.
It comes with the kit. That's
fine.
crazy.
Bath toiletries.
Yeah. Another thing, too, guys, to keep in mind: both Saracens and Newcastle Falcons have landed in Philadelphia. By the way, Saracens have brought pretty much their A side. Unfortunately, Titi Lamusitele is not going to be joining the team because he's still out with a neck injury. But right now I'm looking. It would be good to have him there checking it out, but who knows? But according to the list I got, some of the names that came over from England, they got Marco Vunipola, they got Juan Figallo. Let's see who else. They got Murray Toje, they got George Cruz, Will Skelton, which is an Australian guy, Jack Berger, they probably Vunipola as well. You got Owen Farrell, that might got Farrell. Marcelo Bosch.
He's on all the ads, so he has to be there.
Strange.
Yeah, definitely. Marcelo Bosch, who I hope we can get an interview out of him and Figallo, hopefully in Spanish, because they're Argentinians. Duncan Taylor, the Scottish international. Nathan Earl, which, by the way, Earl, man, that kid, let me tell you. By the way, guys, and the next thing I'm going to say, I don't say that because I'm brown, but dang it, when you put the brown guys in the back, we're like the best players. Seriously, when you put a brown or black brother out there in the back, we're like the best players. Because the black man, is used to running around. So God dang it. Again, I'm not saying that out of racism.
Coming out from
I'm not saying that out of racism, but seriously, like, dang it, like, we're nice. Liam Williams also is there, Chris Wiles, of course, and Alex Good. So that's everyone. Unfortunately, I have not been able to find the listing for Newcastle, but I'm going to tell you this: I am going to be really pissed off if Nick Chavetta didn't come. I'm going to be really pissed off.
If they're not playing, I understand they don't have to play. Just be there. Just they can sign autographs. They can hang out with me the entire game.
Seriously, I mean, if you're gonna bring Evan Olmsted, the Canadian guy, I mean, I'm okay because he's a good lock. I'm not going to take that away from him. But if you don't bring the only American that you have, because Patty Ryan left Newcastle, and he's apparently exactly. Thank you. And he's trying right now. We're
buying your bath kit.
That's right. Exactly. And by the way, his brother Dave, he plays for Agen in France, and apparently the Eagles wanted him to play with them, and he said no because I'm playing professionally for Italy. Now he's 31 years old, so he's not going to play for anyone. So at least his brother is playing. They qualified through their mom but they're born in Cork.
Well, Patty was born in Chicago.
Oh, Patty was okay. Okay. So Dave was born in Ireland.
But so I'll be sort of mad if Nick isn't here. I've looked at the photos that Newcastle has posted. I saw that ugly beard that needs to get trimmed up by Evan Olmsted. Hey, rugby beards are great. You just gotta groom it a little bit. It's unkempt. Out there.
Exactly. You want to do like a Corey shape, correct, Aaron?
Yeah. We've got a well-kempt beard.
Thank you, right here. Of course. I mean,
I've got.
I'll make sure to boot them for you.
Beards. I got my rugby beard starts growing on January 2nd. So
yeah.
But so I didn't see Nick, so I'm kind of annoyed, and I felt that Nick completely crushed Evan Olmsted during the American series. The Can-Am series during the summer. So it's like, hey, you're playing internationally. But, coaches do what coaches do, and they both play the same position. So.
That's what to say.
Yeah. And on that note, what do you guys say we answer some questions from Bob?
Before going into the questions from Bob, is it true that his real name isn't actually Bob, or am I just making that up?
His name is not Bob, but because we pride ourselves on anonymity on Reddit, I'm going to refrain from mentioning his actual name. For all we know, it's Bob Boberson.
I'm sad that his first name is not Bob.
Yeah, we were all a little disappointed when we found that out.
Yeah.
Not going to lie. So this week, Bob wants to know. Actually, this week it's all about Utah, guys. And I think he posted some stuff up on our Reddit page earlier this week about progress, how things are going out there as well. So Bob's the man on the ground in Utah, and so he wants to know, have you heard anything about the rugby Utah Selects going through a rebranding? Is there any truth to that, and what's going on with that? So Aaron, have you heard anything about that?
So I'll answer this later in the show. They're launching a new brand.
All right, so I guess we'll list that one under confirmed. More to come. He also is curious regarding the Selects. Appear to be planning on using a field at Real Salt Lake's new facility. And that would include several Real Salt Lake alumni on staff. What is the relationship between Rugby Utah Selects and Real Salt Lake?
So we don't know of any official relationship. There wasn't any launch. There was that first tweet of the week that started the whole thing where we I forget his name, but it's the Frenchman who was in Utah, and they showed a picture of MLR stuff, and it looked like the Real Salt Lake Academy, which obviously that's a lot of assumptions. However, we do know that the current Real Salt Lake owner, Deloy Hansen, has made it clear that he is interested in rugby in Utah and investing in rugby. We don't know anything about specifically Major League Rugby, but he is very interested in rugby. I think also lacrosse, but I don't care about that. Dean Howes, who is currently the commissioner of Major League Rugby, and I think he's also the vice chairman or like the interim chairman or something like that of Utah. He's a former partner of SCP Worldwide, which used to own Real Salt Lake before Hansen. So, I mean, they may hate each other for all I know, but there is some sort of connection between the two, enough for us to really hope that they can have these games or practices at this really nice, shiny stadium, whatever it's called, academy. That's what I mentioned.
All right. Well, thank you for that. So do we know anything specific about where Rugby Utah is looking for talent? Are they looking for foreign players? Have we heard anything?
They're looking for everyone from everywhere that they can find pretty much right now.
Very definitive.
Everyone.
So if anybody wants to play for Rugby Utah, apparently just show up and you're in.
There we go. Have to be fit, though.
Yeah. Dan, if New York's not doing it for you, Rugby Utah.
I don't think I can live in Utah. It's going from New York. It's not possible.
They sell booze in Utah. Just not.
Yeah, they don't even. Is that ever, or is it just Sundays? Like that alone is just a game code. I know we play on Saturdays, but still. Like,
I mean, in like Pennsylvania, they don't sell liquor on Sundays either. So.
Yeah, it's another crazy town.
Where?
Yeah, we're going on Saturday, so we're fine.
Yeah.
So on that note, also from Bob. Bob is just killing it with questions this week. I think this is the last one, though.
If his name is actually Bob.
If his name is Bob, which as far as we know it is, or not, maybe.
Oh, gosh.
Will the final roster for Rugby Utah be larger than the game day roster, or will they be scrambling to fill injury holes? So I guess it's more of kind of a question about just the overall lineups and how that's going to work for Rugby Utah as well as all the teams, I suppose.
Yeah, so tracking that the training squad is meant to be 35 contracted players. I'm sure with, injuries, more guys will get a shot because as I'll run into going right now, Rugby Utah itself is not rebranding, but the professional side is going to rebrand as the Utah Warriors. As a follow-up question on whether the state rugby organization would be separate from the team, yes. So I did some digging. We have separate LLC filings going on. Rugby Utah Ventures LLC, which is the state rugby organization of Utah, which is interim chairman by Dean Howes because he's a member of the board until they elect a new chairman. I do not think it's going to be Dean Howes because he's the commissioner of NLR. But Rugby Utah Enterprises LLC was established on 15 June. Both RUV and both RUV and RU have the same address in Draper, Utah. So obviously there are significant connections between the state rugby organization and the professional side. If you're familiar with the name Utah Warriors, it was a single season 15 side that competed in the old Super League. When it was established, it was meant to be the foundation of a professional side. Current Eagles Sevens player Maka Anufe came through the Utah Warriors. In 2011, Utah Warriors and Chicago Lions withdrew from the Super League. 2012, the Super League folded, and so did the Utah Warriors. It ceased operation. This and many other organizations seem to be throwing it back to the old Super League. Interesting trivia. There's a guy named Sean Whalen was the head coach of the Utah Warriors, and if you don't know who he is, check out his YouTube channel. I knew him because he was an MMA fighter and a guy who's also done triathlons and is just he's a crazy dude. And I asked him on Twitter if he would if he was coming back to rugby or would like to be on the podcast at any point, and he was like, "Well, I don't think the guys in charge think the same way I do," and didn't really answer about the podcast. So, and then what was it? Also on the 6th of August, the Selects Facebook page posted "Changes Coming," and it was like a video, and then it had a soundtrack, obviously, the old Utah Selects logo, and then it would get fuzzy and fuzzy and fuzzy. So then I did some even more looking. People asked, about the League HQ. There was an LLC filing for Major League Rugby, and it was filed by Dean House, and it's in Salt Lake City. All right, Dan. Victor, what do you guys think?
I really don't have too much to actually add on to that, because you kind of gave a lot of details on that. I mean, it's good that I think the Utah needed a new name. I think the Selects name has been around for a couple of years now, if I'm not mistaken. So it's good. Just make it its own name, make it its own brand. You really want that. I really like what Utah's doing out there, especially because it's basically backed or sanctioned by the whole governing board in Utah. So it has a lot more structure than just one owner who just has some money and wants to put it together, which can be a bit more unpredictable. It seems to be a really stable kind of organization, which is kind of what I expect from Utah, something stable and just something I guess good like that. Victor,
my turn, I guess.
Go ahead. You can
Cool.
just jump in, but I guess I have to announce.
No, I mean I was, but I didn't want to be rude.
He was listening to your sweet words.
I was hoping he jumped in
that's
because
right.
I didn't know how to finish that.
Okay, no worries. You finished it well. Now, guys, so going back to this. Now, wow, first of all, I was not expecting that the Utah name was going to be still used to represent the team, because I'm already used to teams using the city where they're located. So I was waiting for, because I don't think they're going to use that little town where the RU headquarters are at. So I thought it was Real Salt Lake. It's kind of like Salt Lake City, whatever. But in any case, now I'm glad that some of the MLR teams are adopting the names of the former Super League teams, obviously, because it's like a throwback, of course, to that. Now I see that the Utah team is going to be, I guess, it's going to be like the Pacific Islander side of the MLR, because of the large Pacific Islander population that resides in the state of Utah. In case you are not familiar with that, Utah, the state of Utah for the non-Americans is mostly famous for being the birthplace, to a certain extent, to the Church of Latter-day Saints. No, the Church of Christ of Latter-day Saints, also known as the Mormon Church or the LDS Church. And many Mormons went to the Pacific Islands to try to evangelize people to get them in. So a lot of Pacific Islanders are indeed Mormons. In fact, I believe Marco Nufe is. I'm not sure if Martin Josefo is, but I know Marco Nufe for a fact is a Mormon. So I'm expecting a lot of the guys that play for BYU, Brigham Young University, which is owned by the LDS Church, to play for the supposed Warriors.
Yeah, I think personally, I think this is a great thing, rebranding to the Warriors. Mainly because of just the naming system. I think I mentioned before, or maybe I just tweeted it. I wasn't crazy about the idea of there being an elite, the Austin Elites, and then having to come back and play the Utah Selects, and that just sounded dumb to me. I wasn't crazy about it. So I'm glad they have named themselves the Warriors, and now if the Elites can go ahead and get on there and I don't know, come up with something for themselves, so we're not playing the Elites versus the Warriors. Well, I think we know how that one would turn out. I don't care how elite you are. But at any rate, I really like that. I like the name, and I like where they're going with it.
Yeah. As far as the state name is concerned, when it comes to professional franchises, the culture seems to rally around like the state name. So you have, the Utah Jazz, which is really the longest running professional franchise in Utah. They're not the Salt Lake Jazz. And then Rugby Utah itself seems to be rallying around the Utah brand, so this makes plenty of sense to me. So yeah, I think it's solid and it fits with the culture because University of Utah is called the Utes, so really grabbing onto that Pacific Islander and Amerindian warrior culture, and we saw this last year with the when they relaunched their kit. It had what looked to be a native theme going on, and so that wraps up Utah for me. But if you haven't had a chance, check out Austin Elite's Facebook page. Elite and Huns have broken ground on Phase 1 portion of the Nixon Lane complex. They're dozing stuff and getting it leveled out so they can start putting up something. And based on their stadium builder, I wouldn't be surprised if Phase 1's ready for Thanksgiving. But there was some other news, Dan.
Another, in case you missed it, or KIMI, the acronym. The Strikers' new website is currently live. It's fully operational. It says that there's a roster and schedule and everything, but when you click on the schedule, it doesn't lead to anything. But anyway, it does say first match September 21st to be determined, but we think that that's basically just a placeholder. Grant from This Is Texas Rugby posts a lot on the Reddit page, so it's really good to go on because you can see these things. Said how they're doing a lot of scrimmages, I think in November or October, against some of the other D1 clubs. They're all scrimmages. They're not like a fall match or anything like that, but it's really just so that they can have some sort of gameplay before that January match to really get an understanding of the team, since they are officially here now for the orientation and everything going on. So Strikers also actually had the Baylor College of Medicine sports on hand for their orientation. I think it was Grant who was actually mentioning last week that was really a huge emphasis, that they wanted to really focus on making sure no one would get the concussions and making sure everything's up to protocol, and making sure people don't collapse and die because they kind of invested in them. So they want to make sure that they are living and functional. Otherwise, that kind of defeat the purpose of having this team. So they the Baylor College may have been contracted, or it could be an official partner. They may try and do some sort of joint partnership where people from the Baylor College of Medicine, maybe involved in sports medicine, could internship with the Strikers, and then they get a great experience because obviously that's what they're trying to go for from there. So I think that unless someone has something else to say, I'm not sure. There's a lot more news. I think we covered a lot, especially because it's still the preseason for the next 6 months at least.
Yeah, so what was it? So you get told things and you try not to just leak them out, So I knew Strikers had 3 teams lined up. I know on the schedule, which you posted, Dan, it showed they had a match in 10 days. And I'm like, they start orientation today. They got their training kit. It's from, it's Excel Sports.
It's an Australian.
It's an Australian company.
I only know I clicked on the.
Yeah, they sell. They also sell boots. I didn't really like them.
Snake boots.
Not snake boots.
I was gonna say
X blades. X blades.
X blades. Yes, those are the guys.
They make a lot of kit for the NRL. So
yes, and also they're making the kit for London Irish for the Premiership.
Oh, really? Nice.
Yeah.
So guys came in for orientation. They got their training kit. They did a lot of baseline testing. So I think the 21 September was like a placeholder thing, and we'll see them play their short matches, 20-minute halves against, it was Dallas Harlequins, Dallas Reds, and the Austin Blacks, Division I men's sides. between October and November is what we got. So, yeah, so that would be really cool to see. I don't know the location. I think they will play at a local club ground if they're hosting, or go up to the Blacks facility and then the Reds and the Quins facility. We should probably, since they're fully set up shop and they've been so forward with the media, we should probably talk to them, even though we kind of wanted to hit up all the teams that weren't talking. But at this point, if you're not talking, we can't talk about you.
We don't want to talk about you. You're not talking. You don't give us everything to just report on. We don't want to talk about you.
So is there a big match this weekend with Merlins? Oh, yeah, there was that other thing. So Dan came up with the MRC type competition in the Northeast this year, to join into the MLR next year. That is whatever that it was his idea. Hey, but the American Rugby, yeah, you came up with that, dude.
I may have mentioned it. I mean, I'll take credit for anything good.
I
good idea,
thought you were the first
true.
person to mention it, and I didn't.
No, I think it was actually someone else on the Reddit page, like Samo3, or that's actually the only name I can remember off the top of my head. Someone else, I think, actually did theorize that there would be some sort of New York, Boston, Chicago thing based off of a rugby wrap-up show where James Kennedy mentioned a couple cities, and we don't think it's a coincidence that he mentioned those cities.
But it's not. I wanted to point out that it's not the American Rugby Premiership, because that is a sanctioned competition that has gone on for, I think, 10 years. But the Boston teams pulled out. The Glendale Merlins joined up, Division I. And then Life University, they killed their senior men's side. So what you're seeing in here is the first 15 playing in one of the premier Division I men's club competitions.
Mm-hmm. And by the way, speaking of which, now mentioning the ARP, Aaron. So right now you have, like you mentioned, you got Life, you got Merlins, you got All Blue, you got New York Athletic Club and IAC, and you got Mystic River, and I know there's another team that I'm forgetting. I believe. Give me a second, guys. I'll tell you right now. No, it's just those teams, just 5. Yeah. I thought it was 6. Yeah. By the way, speaking of which, Mystic River played this past Saturday against Oxford, which is, I believe, the same Oxford team that's going to play the Collegiate All-Americans in the preview match this Saturday. Well, Oxford beat Mystic River 31-20. Mind you, at the end of the first half, the game was 12-10 going to Mystic River. And all of a sudden, Oxford put 19 points on them to win. Tell me about it. So not too shabby. By the way, guys, another thing too, I'm checking out, and I had to mention obviously because Dan plays for it. I'm looking at the New York Rugby Club website, and I noticed that Division 2 and 3 played against the Village Lions. Division 2, which is, I believe, who you play with. Dan, you guys beat Lions 23-17.
Pumping up the Village Lions.
Of course, no, pumping up New York Athletic Rugby, of course.
NYRC, the oldest single club rugby club in the United States.
Right. Specifically, rugby club. We had a debate over this because we saw that there was a different date or something like that for some West Coast teams, but I think we confirmed it that New York Rugby Club is the first official all rugby. Like, it was specifically made for rugby and only rugby, and that's it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so congrats on that win, guys. 23-17, and then Division 3 drew with the Lions 19-all. So not too shabby. I was looking at the scores right now.
So I mean, I could have told you that too. You didn't have to look at the scores.
Yeah, but I wanted to mention it anyway. Well, you were there, of course. I just want to mention it, to give you some fun.
There was another scoreline I saw. This was an oofer.
Yeah. You know what you're talking about.
So originally, Minneapolis was going to be a part of, MLR came out, but then supposedly everything we have says the Minneapolis group moved to San Diego. But Metropolis RFC crushed the Chicago Lions 94-0.
Wow, dude.
I didn't even know you were going to talk about that. I thought you were going to talk about, I think it was Old Blue over Nyack.
Oh, dude, yeah, 72-12, wasn't it? Something like that?
Smacked them.
Yeah, dude, it hurt.
Well,
like
I mean,
72-12 or something like that.
Old Blue added Cam Dolan, so he probably had like 5 tries himself.
Yeah, that must have been the difference.
Oh, I'm sorry, 76-33 was the score. 76-33.
Still
Yeah,
bad.
dude.
Considering that I think they basically tied when they played last year.
Dang, see, I would have watched that game, but it's all up in Travis Island, and that's deep Westchester County. Yeah, dude, seriously. Like, I wasn't going to go there.
Doesn't even count as New York City.
Yeah. No, that was Westchester County. Yeah, of course. That's like New York State. But well, guys, I think it's time for us to go.
All right, Corey, take us home, man.
Bye.
Good evening, guys. Good evening, guys.
Connect with Earful of Dirt anytime. We're on Facebook and Twitter as Earful of Dirt. You can email us at earfulofdirt@gmail.com or call and leave us a voicemail at 720-600-2679. Until next time, for Aaron, Dan, and Victor, I'm Corey. Thanks for joining us.